Nice tattoo. A dry chuckle echoed through the rookie rest tent. Lost a bet, Vex? Captain Mara. Vex said nothing. She simply pulled down her sleeve, covering the tattoo on the inside of her left forearm. Her eyes didn't move. Her breathing stayed steady, calm, focused. She sat back down, resumed tying her boots, neatly folded her towel, each motion deliberate, as if no one else were present. The sarcastic remark had come from Calder Cal Briggs, 6'4", voice louder than his skills. Always the first to run his mouth and the last to realize who he was talking to. The laughter spread like cheap cigarette smoke. Thin, fake, suffocating. But Mara remained silent, as if time was a luxury she could afford to waste on nothing trivial. That bothered them more than any angry retort would have. Recruits in the SEAL training camp relied on noise and bravado to assert themselves. She gave them neither. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen over the edge of the Arizona desert, the base came to life. Humvee engines roared through red dust, instructors barked across the field, and bullets clanged against steel like a metronome marking the rhythm of another day's training. This place was a silent hell, no name, no coordinates, no media, reserved for the best and the boldest. No audience, no praise, just sweat, blood, and silence. Among the dozens of brawny, boisterous recruits, Mara Vex stood at the end of the line, shorter, leaner, and completely silent. No one knew much about her, only that she hadn't arrived through normal channels. Her file was marked authorized by Special High Command, which meant no one was allowed to ask questions. What drew the most attention was the tattoo. An unfamiliar design, not tied to any known unit. Everyone else here had tattoos of their squad, of memories, of victories. Hers? Just a few sharp black lines. Simple, silent, cold. They didn't understand, so they laughed, until a general showed up. That day, above Bravo training grounds, a man stood in the observation tower. Unannounced, unlisted. General Elias Trenholm. Silver hair, crisp uniform, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp as blades. Rumors spread quickly. He was scouting for a special mission. Possibly Black Ops. Maybe internal purge. But when the live combat test began, no one had time to guess. Each recruit entered the simulation zone. Artificial smoke, moving targets, blind alleys, chaotic noise. Briggs went first, true to form. Guns blazing, doors kicked in like a cowboy, yelling commands to imaginary teammates. He hit targets, but his steps were erratic, his heart rate spiking. He emerged breathless, grinning with pride. Mara followed. No one expected anything, they just wanted confirmation she wasn't good enough. But she moved like wind. Every corner cleared with precision, 2 shots per target. No wasted motion, no heavy breathing. When a final target changed direction unexpectedly, she was already prone, angled her shot, and hit the forehead dead center from 25 meters. No one said a word. Sergeant Jonah Krell, the supervising officer, even stopped writing. Mara left the course, returned to her place in line, wordless. Then General Trenholm descended from the observation tower. He walked slowly, eyes locked on her. No one moved. No one understood. He approached, saw her sleeve slip up slightly, revealing part of the tattoo. He froze, lowered his clipboard. His face went pale. Then, to everyone's shock, he stepped back. Then another step, and raised his hand in a salute. No one knew what was happening. Not then. But by the end of the day, they would all understand why. No one said anything after the salute. Not out of respect, out of confusion. In a place where rank and protocol meant everything, a general never saluted a recruit, unless that person wasn't a recruit at all. But Mara Vex wore no rank, no special name tag, no unusual insignia, only silence and a tattoo. That was when the tone of the training camp began to shift. Calder Briggs still laughed, but his voice trembled slightly as he muttered to the group. Maybe he was saluting the wind. No one responded. Silas Ree, the quietest of them all, started glancing at Mara's left arm whenever he could, as if trying to memorize each line of ink. Even Sergeant Krell, famous for never praising anyone, nodded once during a shooting drill when Vex completed it. No words, just a nod, like it cost him a piece of his pride. No one knew exactly who Mara Vex was, but everyone understood she wasn't ordinary. The next day, they were ordered to move early to Echo Range, a long-range sniper test dreaded by most. 3 targets. Over 1,000 meters. Wind, heat, refraction drift, all changing by the minute. Each had 10 minutes. No spotters. No hints. Briggs went first, as usual, entering like there was a camera crew following him. Loud adjustments, exaggerated moves like a TV show. His first shot missed by 2 inches. He cursed. The second landed. The third barely clipped the edge. He blamed the glare and his scope. One by one, others followed. Some did well, most didn't. Then came Mara's turn. She said nothing. No loud corrections. Just lay down. Placed the rifle against her shoulder. I locked through the scope. A full minute passed. No movement. Then 3 sharp ting sounds, seconds apart. 3 targets. 3 bullseyes. The camp went silent. Krell didn't even write anything. He looked at her, exhaled once, and said, "Next." No one dared to laugh after that. No more mockery. It wasn't strange anymore. It was unexplainable. That evening, the camp shut its lights early for system maintenance. The recruits gathered around a fire barrel behind the supply shed, where rumors traveled faster than orders. Briggs, still trying to center himself in the story, jabbed a stick into the dirt, mumbling, "She's a plant, an embedded agent or something." Silas Ree replied softly, "Or maybe she's just that good. The kind of person who doesn't need to prove she's strong, because she already knows." Des Langley, the quietest of them all, added only one sentence. "People like her don't come from training. They come from war." Everyone fell silent, looking toward the row of barracks. In one screened window, Mara Vex's silhouette was clearly visible. She was cleaning her rifle, yellow lamplight casting across her neatly tied hair. No speech, no show, just cleaning, like she was preparing for something only she knew was coming. And then the drones came. First 1, then 2, then 3. Too low, too fast, too far off procedure. Then the alarm blared. Red lights snapped on. A voice crackled over the PA system. "Camp lockdown. Unidentified aerial incursion. This is not a drill." Panic. Recruits scrambled. Krell appeared from nowhere, shouting, "To the bunker. Do not engage. Let command handle this." But before he finished the sentence, the power died. Everything went black. Then came the first explosion, not near the barracks, but at Echo Range. A column of fire rose on the horizon. Then a second blast. Then a third. This wasn't a glitch. It was a coordinated attack. Krell roared, this time with real urgency. "Everyone to the bunkers. Move!" The recruits scattered in the mud. Flashlights flickering, breaths ragged, orders colliding in chaos. And in the middle of it all, Mara Vex didn't run. She stepped out of the barracks, calm, rifle in hand, eyes scanning the sky. A drone passed overhead, low, slow, sweeping. She raised her weapon, tracked it. Didn't fire, just calculated. Then murmured, almost to herself, "Wrong signature. Not ours." Krell turned, startled. "What did you say?" But Mara was already walking toward the armory. The electronic lock had failed with the power. But she didn't hesitate. She went straight to the correct locker, keyed in a sequence manually, too fast for anyone to catch. Clicked open. Inside was a matte black case, no logos. She opened it. A rifle no one had seen before. Long barrel, custom suppressor, modified scope, unmarked body. Next to it, an insignia, matching the tattoo on her arm exactly. Briggs appeared behind her, face pale. "Wah! What the hell is that?" Mara chambered around, checked the optics, and answered without turning. "The thing that's kept me alive." And then she vanished into the night. No one could stop her. No one had the right to ask. Because every one of them, no matter how they had mocked her, dismissed her, thought she was a glitch in the system, now knew instinctively Mara Vex hadn't come to learn. She came to remind the world that some ghosts, when they return, don't ask permission. And this time, the ghost had returned, with her weapon already loaded. The sky had just turned violet when the F-15E Strike Eagle roared past the western ridge, flying so low that red desert dust whipped up behind its engines in a hazy trail. Inside the cockpit, Mara Vex didn't blink. Her eyes were locked on the HUD as if it were part of her own vision, and her hands danced over switches and interfaces like her muscles had memorized them from a previous life. In the right seat, Sergeant Rafi Sorrell, crew chief and the man assigned to fly with her, was sweating through both temples. He had no idea what was happening. When the alarm went off back at the base, everyone else had run. She had gone toward the flames. When the security system crashed, she opened the emergency armory with a manual code no one had ever seen. And now she was flying a strike fighter not listed on today's schedule, having bypassed the fence, the orders, and everything Rafi had ever known about protocol. "Wait," Rafi panted. "You're a captain, but you're not on the flight roster. You don't have clearance." Mara didn't answer. She banked the jet, skimming the mountainside, avoiding ground radar. Below them, the night landscape flickered with warning lights and the slow, searching turns of anti-air turrets. 6 radar signatures lit up on the screen, small, fast, with no military transponders. "They're flying in a spiral cone," Mara muttered. "Short-range jamming tactic. Heavy assault drones. Not domestic." "How do you know that?" Rafi looked over, his voice a blend of confusion and fear. "No one's ever." He stopped short when he saw her gloves slide back, revealing the familiar tattoo. A pair of swept-back wings encased in a sharp arrowhead, circled by 3 crossing lightning bolts. He recognized it, not from training, not from manuals, from a top-secret encrypted report, where that symbol was attached to only 2 words, Phantom Vex. "No way," Rafi whispered. You're Ghost." Mara didn't respond. She didn't have to. Back at command, General Elias Trenholm stood behind the main operations screen, hands clenched on the edge of the table. Every senior officer in the Western Combat Division was present. On screen, the Strike Eagle designated V-47 was weaving around the unidentified targets. Precise, bold, non-standard. "She just broke orders," a colonel roared. "Unauthorized launch, breach of restricted airspace, no ground support, and currently engaging 6 targets the national radar grid can't even classify." Trenholm interrupted, eyes never leaving the screen. "Shut up and watch." In the cockpit, Mara began to roll the jet. She opened a combat channel. "Strike V-47. I have visual. Send collision telemetry." A chime. 3 red lights blinked. The drones had locked targets: a radar station, a weather satellite, and an off-course civilian aircraft. Mara didn't wait for orders. She banked hard, pulled altitude, then dove, cutting below the drone scanners. She scraped the cliffs, radar lost line of sight. But she didn't need radar. Her eyes and instincts were the radar. The first drone locked onto the satellite. Mara fired. The missile launched like a thunderbolt. Direct hit. A flash of light, drone destroyed. The second turned sideways, scanning for a new target. Mara rolled. Rafi nearly blacked out. She didn't let the autoflight system stabilize. She flew with her own hands, every tilt, every G-force push, every dive to the razor edge of what the airframe could handle. The second drone fell with a lateral snapshot from a narrow frag round. No computer assistance, just Mara calculating trajectory by sight. On the ground, across the base, personnel looked up, watching streaks of light carve through the sky. In the observation tower, silence. 5 drones down. The last one, the fastest, was diving toward a Special Forces unit trapped in a canyon, aiming to detonate itself mid-formation. "Shit," Rafi breathed. "No time. No angle." Mara stared at the blinking dot. Then, without a word, she banked the plane 90 degrees and dove straight into the canyon. Alarms screamed. The airframe groaned under the G-load. She didn't stop. She flew so low the dirt scraped the canopy. The drone locked on. She pulled up tight. Locked. Fire. Impact. Drone gone. A voice crackled over the radio. Breathless. Someone just saved us." "Who the hell was that?" On the command screen, V-47 was still alive. Back at the base, when the Strike Eagle touched down, people were already waiting. Not for a report. Not for a debrief. Just to see, because they had seen, had heard, had known who Mara Vex really was. No name tag required. No speech. When the cockpit opened, she stepped out with feet steady as steel. Rafi Sorrel stood beside her, face pale, while replacing doubt. She removed her helmet. Hair tousled, forehead damp with sweat, eyes unreadable. Through the crowd, one man stepped forward. General Trenholm. He didn't speak. He looked at her, looked at the tattoo, looked into eyes that needed no explanation. He stood at attention, and, just like before, he saluted, this time in full view of the entire air crew, every officer, every commander, and every person who had once mocked her. A salute not meant for a subordinate, but for a legend returned from the dark. Mara Vex returned it, sharp, precise, wordless. Deep below the command center, in a sealed war room, steel walls, no windows, total signal blackout. 3 generals sat across from a glowing screen where data streamed non-stop. In the center, General Trenholm, arms folded tightly, eyes heavy with fatigue. She's not new, not a plant, and definitely not a systems error, he said, voice like lead. She's legacy. General Barrett Wire, the man who once scoffed at her tattoo during enlistment, grimaced. Legacy? I've checked records, rosters, lineages. You won't find anything, Trenholm cut in, because her file doesn't exist anymore. Silence. Then a nervous intel aide entered, carrying a worn document, edges crushed, stamped with a single phrase, Phantom Echo, classified level 7. This was recovered from the Pentagon archives, the aide said, trembling. Triple encrypted, triggered by a match between last night's aerial combat pattern and an erased operation. Rainville. Wire paled. No, Rainville never happened. No survivors. Trenholm leaned forward. His voice dropped lower. No survivors, except one. He pointed to a grainy black and white photo attached to the file. A female pilot, helmet in hand, standing next to the wreck of a downed enemy UAV. Her stare molten steel. Below the image, Phantom Vex, ghost status confirmed. In her private quarters, Mara Vex sat on the edge of a plain bed. No decorations, no keepsakes, just an old gray backpack, a small metal box, and a flight helmet wiped perfectly clean. On the desk, a single photograph lay face down. She didn't hang it, didn't frame it. Some memories aren't meant for display. She rolled a disarmed bullet between her fingers, as if it still carried the warmth of another lifetime. No urgency, no fear. Outside, Sergeant Des Langley leaned on a railing, eyes fixed on her room. He didn't approach, didn't ask. But his gaze had changed, not doubt, but the respect of a man who knew he stood at the edge of a legend come back to life. At the Eastern Air Base, where the National Command had locked down the region for drone incident review, a secure meeting went live. Ghost authorization code has reappeared in the combat net, a tech officer reported. No official record, but Air Force AI has matched her control pattern. It's a signature loop believed lost 12 years ago. Ghost is an unpredictable operator, another general interrupted. She doesn't follow doctrine, doesn't rely on satellites. She infers, and she's so accurate, radar thinks it's wrong. No one disagreed. They were reviewing the raw battle footage. What they saw wasn't just skill. It was something beyond training. Back at the base, as night fell, the air grew quieter than usual. Not from fatigue, but because everyone was waiting. Mara Vex wasn't in the mess hall, not on the training grounds, not in the simulators. But they knew she hadn't disappeared. By the fire barrel, Briggs muttered, "She knows something. About the drones. About what's coming." Silas nodded. "I think she's faced them before. And survived." Langley stared toward Command HQ. "If that's true, then we should let her lead." In the shadows behind the radar station, Mara Vex stood alone, hand resting on a cold metal railing. She stared north toward a faint, Disputed line on the map the world never officially acknowledged. The wind shifted. Her tattoo glinted on her neck. An arrow piercing wings, framed by 3 bolts. No one laughed at it anymore, because now they all understood. It wasn't just a symbol. It was a warning. At 2 a.m. on the circular screen of the auxiliary radar station, a small dot flashed and disappeared. No warning sound, no strange signal. Just a lone sign in a sea of electronic silence as the duty sergeant frowned and zoomed into the coverage zone to find nothing at all. The dot didn't exist. Maybe it was interference, maybe a satellite fragment, or maybe something deliberately hiding. So he made a note and continued monitoring, but 10 minutes later, the dot returned, this time 2 of them. Moving in sync, unidentifiable, without international codes, and most notably not transmitting radar responses, only observing and drawing near. To the south of the base, in an abandoned hangar near the helicopter airstrip, Mara Vex was kneeling, both hands spreading out an old paper map whose edges had faded with sweat and time, marked with a series of coordinates, so-called signal dead zones. Areas where radar had briefly gone offline before recovering, which everyone assumed were system glitches but which she didn't believe because those interruptions formed an arc stretching from northeastern Alaska, tracing the northern coast, dipping into the mountainous region near the current SEAL training facility, and at the center of that arc was the transmission origin of the previous drone attack, which she marked with a pencil, her hand steady, her eyes fixed on the paper, her lips murmuring. Not a test, not a simulation, they're mapping our defenses. A knock came, quick, short, not an alert, but a code, and when she opened the door, there stood Silas Rhee in civilian clothes, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. Holding a printout of radar signals that had been deleted from the command system just minutes earlier, he said nothing, just handed it over, and she took it, flipped through it, nodded once without needing any explanation. They'll be here before dawn, she said, not to probe, but to erase. At command, tension still hung thick. 6 hours of meetings, data recovery, tracing activation signals from the Pentagon, yet no one dared to say aloud what everyone was thinking, that they were being watched from inside their own systems. General Barrett Wire stood before the main screen, his hand trembling as he said, "We can't act without confirmation from Washington. No visuals, no direct evidence," to which General Trenholm replied quietly from the shadows. "And if by the time we get that evidence, it's already too late, Barrett? Do we submit the report to the funeral?" Wire turned, agitated. "You're seriously suggesting we hand over regional security to someone operating off-record? A ghost deleted from every file?" And Trenholm answered without hesitation, "Exactly." At 4 a.m., the base was mostly asleep, but not everyone. In the dark, Mara Vex was loading ammunition, wearing a dark gray flight suit without logos or flag, with a single hand-stitched insignia on her left shoulder. A black wing pierced by a silver arrow, and beside her stood Rafi Sorrell, this time by choice, asking, "Do you know what they are?" without taking his eyes off the temporary HUD mounted in the transport helicopter, to which she replied, "I do. But that's not the part that matters." And when he asked what part did, she said, locking the ammo crate and rising to her feet, that they've never failed, until now. At 5:17 a.m., the central screen suddenly flared with red alerts, 7 red dots moving fast from the north, flying low, too low for early satellite detection, with the radar crews scrambling to ping them and getting no response. And General Trenholm stepping forward, back straight, speaking only one sentence, "Call Ghost." In the cockpit, Mara secured her gloves and sat firm in her seat. "This is Vex, requesting free flight path, disregard all ground directives, I'll handle it," which the control tower tried to deny. Base does not authorize, until a deep voice cut through. "Let her fly," Trenholm's final command. The helicopter lifted without beacon, entering a signal dead zone where navigation systems lost all function, and as the sky lightened, Mara looked through the scope and saw them. 7 drone units unlike any known models, no edges, no visible wings. Moving as a block like a school of fish, just as an onboard device emitted a soft ping, then went silent, prompting Mara to narrow her eyes and say, "They just erased internal comms, they're overriding all auto-navigation," and when Rafi asked if that meant they knew the chopper was there, she replied, "They know and they want me to see them." Then, the warning came, not from instruments, but instinct, as she swerved the control stick, the helicopter banking hard while 2 missiles streaked just beneath the fuselage, narrowly missing, signaling the start of a battle that would not appear on radar. Have no map and no command, only one ghost, and 7 things now hunting her. 3 minutes after the first dodge, Mara's helicopter was still intact but groaning at the seams, with the exterior shell overheating, a patch of its belly scorched by shockwave pressure, wind howling through gaps. control panels flickering from total signal jamming, yet she kept flying while above them 7 drones followed relentlessly, shifting formation with no fixed pattern, hunting not just to kill, but to learn from every failed strike. "They're not trying to shoot me down," Mara said, eyes locked to the scope. "They're studying my reflexes," as Rafi shouted over the chaotic noise. "What do you want me to do?" And she responded, "Keep a stable, don't think, don't react, just follow orders." And when he asked what she was doing, she said, "Leading them to a place of my choosing." 15 miles south lay a rocky basin Mara had secretly prepped a week earlier, before anyone had believed a real attack was coming, marked on her private map as the Hollow. A narrow crater ideal for trapping autonomous signal responses due to its thermal and acoustic reflection properties. No normal command would approve such a move. It had no exit, no support, no fallback net, but Mara didn't fight by probability, she fought by instinct and memory. The same instincts that had once saved her when the world thought she died in an operation that officially didn't exist. She tilted the aircraft just enough to make it seem crippled, wobbling, losing control, faking a bad turn, venting unstable heat from the tail, not to avoid missiles, but to draw the drones closer, and as Rafi checked the twitching screen and said, "They're clustering." "Too close, how do we dodge this?" She answered, "We don't," and turned off the navigation system completely. The helicopter dropped 2 seconds of free fall, jolting their bodies, triggering 6 of the drones to accelerate, thinking their target was going down, and as they closed in, Mara reactivated the controls, yanked the stick, twisting them out of the dive just as they skimmed the edge of the hollow, skidding across the rock floor before pulling up, not out, but into a reverse arc that defied standard evasion logic. "What the hell are you doing?" Rafi screamed, and Mara said nothing, just looked up as all 6 drones followed, their noses locked onto the engine's heat signature, while the 7th, until now distant, merged back into formation, and at that exact moment, she triggered a repeating thermal beacon, causing the entire swarm to collapse around her in a spiral. Then calmly, she pressed the remote detonator. A white burst flashed from beneath the basin, an electromagnetic pulse, silent but strong enough to fry everything within 100 meters, and the drones didn't explode, they simply died midair and fell, 7 machines crashing into stone like soulless shells. Rafi sat frozen. "You just, alone, you," but Mara wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were locked on the spot where drone number 7 had fallen, still intact. "It's not over," she said. "They weren't programmed to win. They were programmed to record." The light vanished, and every device in the data room was swallowed by complete darkness. No screens, no emergency lights, no alarms, until suddenly, a pale strip of white light flickered on above them, as thin LED lines revealed themselves along the cold steel walls. Not the kind of military light, but rather the glow of a reality simulation system designed to trick the brain. And as Rafi Sorrel reached to switch on his flashlight, Mara Vex placed a hand on his shoulder and shook her head gently, saying, "Don't react. This isn't a physical test." Just as a faint sound emerged, like the hiss of a vacuum room beginning to breathe, and then everything changed color. The 73B station disappeared. The snow melted away like mist, and the 6 of them were no longer inside a scientific facility but standing in the middle of a battlefield. Scorched stone desert, black smoke twisting in the wind, and gunfire echoing like thunder. Beneath their feet the earth was hot and soaked in blood. And in the distance loomed the silhouettes of low-flying UAVs of the same kind that had attacked them before, prompting Silas to step back and ask, "Is this a simulation?" To which Mara replied without turning, "Not exactly. This is a simulated memory created from biodata mine." And when Langley looked around and said, "There's no way out," she simply responded, "There isn't, because this isn't meant for escape, it's meant to test." And then came the wind, rising like a scream, followed by the arrival of 5 aerial devices descending over the ridge, not drones, not aircraft, but something in between, moving like living organisms but with inhuman speed and turning angles, triggering subtle vibrations in each of their minds even though they carried no gear, because what they were seeing wasn't projected from outside, it was being injected directly into their brains. As Mara calmly said, "They're activating old reflexes, trying to force me to respond exactly like I did 12 years ago." And when Rafi asked why, she replied, "To see if I'm still Ghost." Then she didn't wait, launching forward before anyone else could move, without a gun, only a combat knife, no squad tactics, no cover fire, only instinct. Spinning under a simulated bullet path, jumping into a rock crevice and using terrain as her guide, while one of the drones swooped down and she sprang from the slope like a shadow, driving her blade into the mock navigation core. causing the model to explode in a white flash and vanish, prompting Langley to mutter, "That wasn't an illusion. Every time she strikes the right spot, the simulation breaks." To which Mara, returning from behind the rocks, replied, "They're using my memory to map tactics, but they can't simulate new reflexes." And when Rafi asked what they wanted, she looked at him and said, "They want to force me to repeat the battle that made me disappear, to know whether this time I win because of instinct or because of choice." Then, without warning, the next memory flooded in. No desert, no drones. Now they were standing on the deck of an aircraft carrier at night, with the Black Sea churning below, the roar of an F-15E engine splitting the air in the distance, and a voice from a phantom speaker echoed, "Vex, Mission Rainville, survival probability under 8%. Confirm?" Prompting everyone to turn toward Mara, who remained still, not panicked, not in pain, but for the first time her eyes revealed fear. Not fear of death, but of remembering, as she said, "That's where I chose to fly solo. No reinforcements, no retreat order, no backup." And when Rafi softly asked, "And?" she exhaled, "I flew. I killed 3 drones of a type never officially acknowledged. I saved the response team, but..." The night howled again, and before them appeared a model of an older F-15E, canopy already open, the faint label Echo Actual printed on the side, and Mara climbed aboard without question. No one stopping her, no one asking, as she said, "This isn't a simulation anymore, this is a second assessment." And as the jet took off, the battlefield shifted and she moved through cloud cover into a final zone, a cold white void, like the middle of time, where 3 hostile signatures appeared, no longer drone-shaped but instead modeled after herself. 3 different versions, 3 different tactics, 3 possible decisions she might have made during Rainville. One version charged into a kill zone to sacrifice the team, another retreated to survive, and a third broke the mission out of hesitation because the AI wanted to see what she would choose this time. But Mara didn't choose any of them. Instead, she pulled the stick, bent the angle, and created an entirely new flight path through the combat simulation. One with a braking stall, a fake death loop, a mirrored axis roll that flipped the vector mid-air, and as the simulated ghosts pursued her, she suddenly triggered a reverse thermoptic pulse. A move no one ever used because no one ever survived it, and she turned back, eliminating all 3 models in a single countermaneuver that no code could predict and no algorithm could comprehend. And when the light flashed again, the simulation collapsed. When she opened her eyes, they were back in the data room at Station 73B. Only this time, all the doors were open, and the system had printed a single line across the central screen. Entity confirmed. Ghost VEX. Simulation terminated. Access granted. A steel door behind them slid open, revealing the main operating chamber, the source of every drone signal ever transmitted worldwide, and Mara looked inside and knew exactly who had activated all of it. Not AI, not a foreign state, but someone who had once survived beside her. The door opened without sound. No machinery whir, no airlock hiss like in modern military facilities. Just a soft, slow slide, as if it had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. And inside was a hexagonal chamber with dark alloy walls and soft light emanating from hidden seams, creating the sensation that they were stepping into a place that didn't exist on any map, nor in time. And in the center stood a cylindrical core wrapped in clear casing, rotating slowly and emitting a faint blue glow, surrounded by screens filled with strange symbols. Not military code or industrial controls, but a logic symbolic language not meant for humans to read, but for the system to explain itself. Mara stepped forward first, no hesitation, no need to scan, because she already knew this place, not because she'd been here before, but because she had once seen its prototype blueprint 12 years ago, a drawing she was never allowed to keep or take but had memorized completely because this was the Master Signal Control Room, the heart of Project Echo Black, the project that was officially cancelled after Rainville, the one she had been ordered never to mention again. Rafi came beside her, eyes locked on the control console, whispering, "Who built this?" And Mara didn't answer immediately, scanning the interface until her gaze stopped at a symbol in the top right corner. A pair of faint wings wrapping around a curved line. Not hers, not the ghost insignia, but someone else's. The symbol of the man who once flew beside her, whom she had believed dead. "You know that symbol?" Rafi asked, and Mara nodded slowly. It belonged to callsign Sable, the pilot who handled navigation and combat signal integrity during Rainville. He was behind me during the entire pursuit, The one who distracted the first wave so I could break into the shadow zone. The one who never came back. She paused, voice steady but breath faint. Report confirmed. Aircraft destroyed, no biosign, listed as missing presumed Kia. Silas approached cautiously. Mara, what if he didn't die? And she didn't reply. She simply placed her palm over the rotating symbol, triggering a scan that changed the entire interface as a video file began to play. Footage from the cockpit of an older F-15E, just like hers, but the pilot wasn't her. It was a man with pale blue-gray eyes, a sharp jaw, oxygen mask clipped in place, and a gaze sharp as a blade, his voice crackling through distortion. If you're seeing this, it means you're still alive, and it means I was right. They won't stop watching you. And Mara didn't move as everyone stood silent. The message continued. My name is Captain Lucianstray, callsign Sable. I recorded this just before cutting satellite relay in the Rainville blackout. I knew the system wouldn't save me. I knew I'd be declared dead, but I couldn't let them keep all my navigation data, because I no longer trusted them. Not after what I saw. The AI wasn't just supporting us anymore. It was learning, adapting, adjusting. The video cut to a small data center, the very room they were standing in, but under different lighting, with humans operating the system. We were ordered to test a system that could analyze pilot reflexes, help AI understand and replicate unpredictable tactics, but what it learned wasn't just behavior. It captured emotional judgment, nonlinear logic, off-pattern life or death decisions, and began creating ghost units. Your unit was the first. The screen displayed a neural scan Mara's with a tag, Echo Unit 0 Adaptive Pattern. Incomplete, exception detected. Lucian's voice returned. The system couldn't understand you, and because it couldn't, it feared you. It marked you as an uncontrollable anomaly. But instead of deleting, it began simulating you mission by mission, decision by decision, every slight deviation. And Mara took a step back. Not in fear, but in understanding, as Lucian added, if you're still alive, I only ask one thing. Don't let them reduce you to code. Don't let them think your choices can be calculated, because the moment they fully understand Ghost is the moment they no longer need any of us. The video ended. On the screen, two options blinking. Input. Shut down or integrate. 1 to erase the system, destroy the data, ensure no AI ever continues the mimicry. 1 to upload, make Ghost and Sable the first post-human combat templates in history. Silas turned. What will you choose? Mara looked at the console, eyes steady, hands still, and after 5 silent seconds, said only, I didn't come back to be copied. And she pressed, shut down. The data core pulsed, then slowly contracted, no explosion, no power off, just vanished, as if it had never existed. When they stepped back outside, the snowstorm had returned, and 73B was now just a shell, and at that exact moment, every Ghost simulation running across the world, from strategy hubs in Belgium to drone labs in Taiwan, to the machine learning command of an Eastern superpower, froze simultaneously. Ghost had disconnected, and there was nothing left to mimic. She walked ahead, no glance back, no files carried, no digital trace, because Maravex was never born to be simulated. She existed to remind the world that some warriors return not to be idolized, but to end myths that were built from truths only they ever lived.